Critical Blast, where pop culture gets blasted.
And welcome everybody once again to the Critical Blast. Yes, it's a cavern. I'm not going to bother hiding that. It's just where we are. We're in the Critical Blast Caverns with yet another foray into independent comics making and crowdfunding and graphic novels. And tonight we have our special guest, Mr. Adam Lawson, who's going to take us inside the pages of the Kill Journal. Adam, how are you doing tonight?
Hey, I'm awesome, dude. RJ, thanks for having me on, man.
Glad to do it. So how long have you been into comics, man?
Well, so I've been into them since I was a teenager. But as far as been into writing them, it was about 2 or 3, actually, I call it 3 years ago. I started working on a graphic novel called The Eighth. And, my day job is I write for television. I'm what they call a TV showrunner. If anybody doesn't know, that it's kind of like the writer and director of the TV world. And in my case, I do both. I've always had a deep love of comic books, and that passion I remember reading 100 Bullets. I was doing this movie called Snakes on a Plane, and Samuel Jackson came to set with 100 Bullets. And in the graphic novel, he was reading it. And I remember thinking, if it's cool enough for him, it's got to be cool enough for me.
Absolutely.
And so I read Brian Azzarello's 100 Bullets. And I remember thinking, this is it. Like, I'm over the traditional superhero story. And I realized so much how much I just loved what sort of this other side of it. Not that superhero stories aren't awesome, and that Frank Miller's Master Race #3, Dark Knight 3 that came out was awesome, but that there was just this wider world, I should say. And when I read that, that's when I thought, man, I would like to write comics as well. And so then I started working on this graphic novel called The Eighth. And I got 5 issues into this, paid the artist out of my own pocket. He's somebody who did storyboards for me. Amazing artist, who also colored it. And then the pandemic hit, and I said, you know what, now's the time to launch that publishing company. And so I've been developing these other stories and paying for concept artwork over these years, and then said, let's go for it. And so that's what became The Eighth, right at kind of the beginning of COVID. And it was a very successful campaign. It's a 200-page graphic novel, hardcover slipcase. And then and I'm following it up with my next series, The Kill Journal. One thing that's been fun about The Eighth is because I was so far ahead on the issues, is that as soon as the campaign ended, people started getting a digital issue every month.
Cool.
So the fans have already read 3 issues into that, and there is this sense of real delivery, and also that the quality in the work. And so it's been really fun to see those fans come alive. And now we've been preparing for The Kill Journal, which is that is a story about a maths genius and who's troubled by his brother's suicide and ancient Sumerian armor and weaponry. And this is a horror graphic novel.
Okay. Do you think that that comics appeal or have a greater appeal rather to television and movie screenwriters because they're so used to looking at storyboards, and this speaks immediately to the language that they're used to?
I think for myself, it worked the other way around, because I grew up on comic books. And I remember, Jim Lee's X-Men with Chris Claremont. And I remember that distinctly being in a store, seeing that art and being like, whoa. And then it was seeing those panels that initially started me on the pathway of putting together stories via pictures. And then I started in television and been there for, about 20 years. And so I think then what happens is that started in comics and you were young, right? And then it only gets further cemented in you with storytelling and television. And then when assembling a graphic novel, you've just spent so much time in the edit bay. You've spent so much time, setting up shots and thinking like, does this frame tell this story, right?
Sure.
That it becomes, I think, a real natural way. And I think not necessarily all TV writers spend time doing that, but because I direct my television shows as well, I'm stuck with a camera, trying to figure out how to tell the story in a box. I think what's fun about a comic book is the box breaks open, RJ.
This is true. Yeah, because with your storyboard, you've got, panel, and it's more like the bio tapestry. It just keeps on going, and you kind of wrap around. You come here, but with comics, you do have to get more dynamic with your panel arrangement. We've seen the 3x3 9-panel grid that Alan Moore loves and Tom King loves, but the more dynamic comics would have a cinematography feel to them, because you'd say suddenly there's a 2-page spread, or there's like an angular cut to a panel, and it just kind of flows in a different way, and that really does add to the pacing of a story. That in a way that you can't really do in a storyboard to explain how you want to do a cut or something in a movie or a television show. That's right. And also too, just like the shape of the panel can affect the feeling of it, right? If it's a square panel, like you're saying, it's the 3x3, it's a very, stock, like chop feeling. But if maybe you take your panels and you angle them, or you make them jagged, because maybe somebody's getting shot and they're by a window and they break apart into glass, and the images are the pieces of glass that are falling down. That says a different part of the story. And in the 8th, my previous graphic novel, we did that a lot with how can you lay out the panels in a way where the layout actually tells a good piece of the story, right? Or the feeling of it. And that was a really exciting thing, I think, as a storyteller, is that you're not stuck in 16:9. Everything's 16:9, right? Yeah. And then you're also in a world where, as with any of my episodes of television, it's me always trying to, I shouldn't say fight, but work out with the network how much money they're willing to give me to spend per episode. Sure. Whereas an artist page rate is the same, whether or not we're in space, or there's a monster, or we're having a dialogue scene. And so you have a different kind of freedom. Yeah, it would be interesting if somebody came up with a technology, or at least an experimental kind of show, where you could break the panel of the screen. I guess the closest I could think of would be Disney did a Muppet 3D at their Disneyland, where sometimes you'd be watching this, but then something happened on the wall over here. It broke out and came over here. It's totally cool, right? Yeah, and it would be fun to experiencing things that way. And I get it, because movies and television have to mass produce, but half of them are being watched on this, which is a very fixed size designated by Apple, versus. I spent all this money on big screens, and now I'm streaming everything right here with my glasses on. I know. You know what I mean? It's like, that's why I always chuckle, because you go into Costco, right? You see the big 80-inch TV, and you're like, bro, about less than 1% of the world is watching TV that way, and 64% watch it like that. Yep. I certainly do. I haven't done so since COVID, because I've been working from home. So I have cast it onto my wider monitor. But yeah, when I'm not at home all the time and it's lunch or whatever, I'm sitting here, screening things on my phone. Yep. And that's the case. And so fair enough. So that's the, it's a constraint of television that isn't in the constraint of, a book, right? That is so cool that we can do different things with it. And so that was really exciting. And, with Kill Journal, I don't know if you can bounce to the pre-launch page. I can show you the video. I can bounce to the pre-launch page. If not, I can. Okay. If you've got it already up, go ahead. I'll let you share, because I've got another screen shared here. I've got the got the graphics that we'll eventually get to here. Okay, perfect. Yeah. Well, let me. I'll just take that off right now. Oh, you're the man. Okay. Well, let me just do this real quickly, and I'll get us to. This, I'll do a little share screen. And for everybody watching, the logo on the bottom of the screen here is not Adam's logo. I had to mess around with it, because if I kept it in its original nice looking form, it'd be sitting on top of our faces. So I had to play with it different. Let me make sure. Let me do this real quickly. I'm going to share the screen. I want to make sure I don't do this wrong, where I keep the audio. Now you got to click that little button in the bottom that says with sound. So Chrome tab, share with it. There it is. Why that's not default. Yeah. So here we go. I'm going to give you full screen on this. Okay, great. So here we go.
My name is Sydney Valentine, and I'm a survivor. A revenant slaughtered everyone I love, including my daughter. They're evil spirits, back from the dead, who wield machetes and tire irons, and a bullet to the head won't stop them. After one butchered his congregation, St. George claims God called him to hunt the revenants, and he's recruiting survivors to join him. Most won't make it out alive, but at least they're taking a stand. God has his book of life, And St. George has his kill journal.
Wow. Now, you know what? Trailers are becoming almost as important to these crowdfunded things as the idea of the book itself.
I think so. You know, RJ, you've got a limited amount of time, right? And people are getting inundated with a lot of them, and it's a way to stand out. And it's a way for me to use my television background to help me in the publishing space, right?
Yes.
And I think that what's cool about that is that that's 37 seconds long, right? And 5 seconds of it is an end tag. And hopefully you know what the story is and you know what it feels like. And you get to see some of the cool art and the images, and you get a feel for what this is, and to say, oh, that's for me, or that's not for me. And I think, at the core of the Kill Journal, it's a story about people who've been traumatized, right? They have a revenant, which is an evil spirit back from the dead, bent on revenge. And this is a broad Western phrase that's Jiangxi in the East. And sometimes we call them slashers, as a sort of a type of revenant. And they've killed people in their act of revenge. And there's these survivors whose families, children, friends have been killed by these revenants. And in this state of trauma, they have only sort of one option. They can either fight back, pick up baseball bats and chainsaws and go after the revenants, or they can succumb to the misery of it. And these are the few who decide to fight back.
Now,
and
is this a one issue story, or is this going to be an ongoing saga of a kind, sort of like The Walking Dead?
Yeah, so it's the latter. So this first graphic novel is 88 pages. So it's a whole big ride. It's an 88-page story. You're going to get into the depth of the characters and the world, and it's a leather-bound book with a ribbed spine.
Wow.
And it looks like an old Catholic Bible that says the Kill Journal on it, because the priest, St. George, who kind of runs the group, is this de facto priest, and so he's like, imagine, ripped one of his old Bibles apart and keeps a record of all of the revenants they kill in it, right? And so in a way, it's like you're getting that book.
Very nice.
And then in the back of it, there's these dossier stories. And I'm someone who I don't love. How do I say this? I don't love origin stories in the sense that they can kind of take over a whole comic book, or they could kind of take over a whole movie,
Yeah.
And so I love that. So I love that with this story, it's got right into the tail. And then in the back, there's these 4 dossier stories, which covers the night each one of these survivors were initially attacked. And now it's mentioned in the main story, but then this kind of fully expands it. So it's fun is after you've read the 88 pages, you've taken, thank you, Nicholas. That's the guy. He's the man. He has been an awesome friend and follower on Twitter. Thank you, Nicholas.
He was very excited before the show began here, so I knew he'd pop in.
Yeah, it's awesome.
You know why you're here, Testify. You're here to watch how a show's supposed to be done. Okay.
And I wanted but I wanted to explore those stories. And so I felt like, one of my favorite things is when you finish a graphic novel or a tale, and then there's like maybe a little backup story or a little teaser into something that broadens a character you've just spent a lot of time with. And so there's those 4 stories in the back. And the fun part about that is those are written by 4 different writers, and there's 4 different artists doing them. So it's also not only an exploration of these origins, but of different writers and different artists who bring something different than I bring.
Okay, so when you say dossiers, they're going to be more comic book stories, not Alan Moore, Watchmen pages that were like, reports and newspaper clippings.
Right. It's off that idea of like the dossier, but instead of it being like you're saying a newspaper clipping, it's a 6-page story.
That's cool.
So, yeah, and so takes NyQuil.
Testify runs a really off the wall comedy show that we got invited onto sometimes. So he comes over here to say hi to us, and that's his personality. He's just like, why am I here?
Yes, and Nicholas, yes, Cody is doing an amazing dossier story. He's doing it about Sydney, which is our central point of view character, and the night her daughter was taken from her, and she'd gone to meet this guy at a cabin in the woods that she was looking to to hook up with. And, she's looking for love. She's a single mother. She left her daughter in the car while she was inside. The Revenant came and killed everyone at the camp, and she is left without a daughter. And the Revenant also took her as well, and the doctors brought her back.
Sort of a Friday the 13th story going on there.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, and Cody did an amazing job. And the horror isn't necessarily his forte. He's really great at creating chemistry between characters, which is why I initially went to him and I said, listen, I already have the framework for the horror. I know how that story goes, but I need what you bring. And he brought this really nice sweetness between the mother and the daughter, and the connection between some of the other people. And it gave it more heart. And
that can make for really good horror, because you get this empathetic sort of connection to the people in it, which makes the contrast of the actual horror events so much more impacting, I think.
I think so. Yeah, RJ, I think you're right. I think that's the core of this tale is it's like this complex world of violence and vulnerability, right?
Right.
Where people are very vulnerable and they're in a violent setting, and how are they going to, and how do they react to it? So go ahead, RJ.
No, go ahead. Let me finish your thoughts.
So for the campaign, like I said, it's an 88 pages leather bound book. And what's also fun is for anybody who wants to sign up, because it's in pre-launch right now and it goes live September 29th. Yeah, Nicholas, you're totally right. When you care for them, the horror becomes more real, right? It goes from slaughterhouse to, I'm calling this a splatter movie with a conscience, right? And so the fear becomes real.
Yeah.
But for anybody, it's in pre-launch right now, and it's awesome, and you can sign up. And we are giving away, gave one away already in August. We're giving another one away in September.
Give you full screen for this.
Cool Revenant mask.
Oh, that's
cool
awesome.
Revenant mask. It's this cool resin built, amazing thing built by 6x6, and you will for sure be the coolest guy at your Halloween party.
He does great work with the masks.
Doesn't he? He built this really beautiful mask, and this is, Nicholas, speaking of Cody's story, this is the mask worn by the Revenant in his story. And so this will also be one of the tiers on the campaign, but I wanted to give a couple away just for people who took the journey. So if you sign up on the pre-launch, you got 2 more emails coming that have awesome high-res art images of our monsters, and we'll show a couple of those here with RJ, and some will be exclusive. And then I'm going to give away one of these masks to a day one backer.
That mask reminds me of something, and I can't quite put my finger on it, but I want to say it was like one of the creatures in one of the more recent Doctor Who episodes. Not exactly like it, but it's very, very, especially since it's the Doctor Who with a budget, not the Doctor Who of the 80s that, I grew up on.
Yeah, it's the Doctor Who with the budget, yeah.
Yeah.
But if you want to pull up some of those images, RJ, we could talk
Sure
through the characters.
So here we are on the Kill Journal, and I don't have any particular order on them, probably alphabetical.
That's no problem. So this is one of our survivors. This is Brecken. And Brecken is the Cajun Swamp Rat who St. George, our priest, he found him in the swamp, a weight tied around his neck, thrown into the swamp. He dragged him out and saved him. And he has the darkest past of all the survivors, and it's the most mysterious. And his past ultimately comes back to haunt not just him, but the rest of the survivors. Yes. Also, in the dossier stories, the guy who is the showrunner on the animated series of Venom, he wrote that dossier story. Very nice. He's very scarred up, isn't he? Yeah. Well, those are actually tattoos on him, voodoo tattoos.
Okay. Oh, they're voodoo tattoos. Okay, I see that now. There's more of a pattern to it. I had to get a little closer.
Yeah. The Calvary Collecting. You're too kind. I'll keep it a little brief because I know there's nothing worse than moving. But
you're here for another 40 minutes, Cavalry.
So those are voodoo tattoos on his body. You might not notice it when it's small. And he has a backstory dealing with this voodoo cult that plagued his early days.
So he's probably more Creole than he would be Cajun.
I'm sorry. Creole is the right word for it, and that's his accent. And that's what he and that's what he speaks in as well too. And there's bits of French and Creole expressions in there as well.
Creole is funny because I did a story with a Creole character. It wasn't my story. We talked about Doctor Who, and Telos Publishing. Telos Publishing had to give up their Doctor Who franchise back to BBC when they started making books again. So they spun off this Time Hunter character into a series of books. And his name was Honoré Le Chasseur. He's a Black American from Louisiana. He's living in post-war London. He's developed a British accent, and no one ever explained why. So when I got my book, I'm like, well, he did it because he's Creole, and he didn't want people to think he was French. And the editor kept kicking it back, saying, all this French that you're sending us is wrong. We need to edit this. I'm like, yeah, no, it's not. And here's why. Yeah. And he's like, okay, well, then he's Creole. I mean, I was using exact spellings and apostrophes and such, and it drove them crazy for a little bit until they figured out, look at this dictionary, and then we'll go with that. So he looks like a bit of a Hungan there. He's got a skull on a tether wrapped around his double barrel.
That's right. So it's like one of the cool things that this artist, his name is Tauntaun Revolver, did is he added these little skulls into different things, and he added such finite detailing to everything. I was kind of pushing him to add all these little packs and weapons, and there's a little skull hanging there to kind of symbolize the voodoo.
Very cool. Yeah. Now here's a handsome gentleman, and this is the mask you just showed us.
Yes. So this is the monster, or I should say the monster. This is the Revenant, that is maybe our most haunting one throughout the story. And this is someone who was betrayed by his brother and given over to this group that then was trying to make a monster out of him, and he was left for dead in the swamps. And a year later, he came back as this frightening thing, trying to get revenge on the family member who betrayed him. And so he's always kind of near the waters, cabins in the woods by lake, the swamps, and so part of these revenants is they are, because they're a vengeful spirit that's back and they're inhabiting this body, is they can't be killed by natural means. They can be slowed or stopped for a moment, but you have to figure out their origin story, what created them, and then build a trap that turns that against them.
So you're kind of like a profiler.
Bingo, right? They've got to figure out the whole story. In the same way, like in an easy analogy is like with Jason Voorhees, in Friday the 13th, you can't just kill Jason. You have to go take him back to Camp Crystal Lake, where all the terror happened to him personally as a child, and drowned him there. It's a similar kind of effect with each of these. So part of the hunt is discovering the past and how to turn that into a trap or a weapon to kill them.
The art is really exquisite on all this. As far as the anatomy and the detailing. If we're going to ask where are her organs, I can tell you where they are. They're trailing all over the floor there.
Yes, that's right. I mean, this, it's heavy detailing. Tauntaun did all of mine. There's a little concept artwork. And then we'll see here in the next couple of pages, I'll show you some of the interior artists done by a new guy named Raymond Bermudez, who I think doesn't disappoint.
Awesome. One thing I also want to say here too is we're going to see this as it keeps going. You have a very nice, consistent presentation of all the characters here with this card set going on here. A lot of times you'll see campaigns where it's like, here's a panel from the book that showcases this character. Here's another panel that showcases that character. They may be in different kind of poses, different kind of scenes, different size panels. This is like lobby cards.
Yep.
And I'm sure that was intentional, and it's based off your experience working in the film industry. But
that's right, absolutely. And I think that building these kinds of character cards and presentations can really take people into the world, because I think you get hooked on characters. At least I do.
Sure.
And so this is Finch. He grew up just south of the U.S.-Mexican border. His dad ran the dog fighting pits, and one day a dog didn't show, and so he threw Finch in the pit, who then killed the pit bull, and then his dad kept raising him alongside the dogs, training him to fight in the pits. And then a revenant comes later in his life, and called Mr. Crispy, who his father helped kind of create, and who burns down the dog fighting pit, and Finch is freed, and his dad is burned in the fire. And so he is kind of an animal at the core, like a dog. He kind of behaves that way with the group. He is aggressive to anyone outside of the group and gentle to those inside the club. But he also is the one struggling with maybe someday he could become a Revenant himself.
Yeah, I was going to say, if he's been owes his freedom to a Revenant, he would be very interesting to play psychologically. Why am I hunting these things? I would still be fighting dogs and risking my life if one of them hadn't released me.
Right. Well, the funny thing is he still loves his dad, right? There's this odd abusive relationship between him and his dad where he still loves his dad, even though his dad did that to him. But like you're saying, he is the one that's maybe on the verge that could maybe be tipped over the edge to become a Revenant himself. And that's part of his story.
All right. And
this is Marty, and her dad was a chemist who lost his job and then started building bombs in the basement and selling them to the highest bidder. And she was his lab assistant and he was her everything. And then his dad met a woman and Marty started to kind of fade in the background of his life. And so enacting urban myth at a carnival, she tried to get rid of the woman, not realizing it was real, and it ended up getting rid of her father. And so she now is haunted by her own guilt, and she is a bomb maker and chemist and a girl trying to grow up with no one to tell her how.
Yeah, she reminds me of Tank Girl, just with you've probably seen her, but just the way she's wrapped in the high boots and very cool.
That's right.
You got the Lori Petty haircut going.
Right. And that's definitely the styling for her. And there was this kind of, because she's kind of this reckless, angsty girl in the story. And I think that kind of, that Tank Girlish sort of vibe is her, but Tank Girl's stuck in a horror movie.
And she carries a lot of chemicals with her. I'm looking at the duffel bag. So
that's right.
That's her jam.
That is definitely her jam. And she is packed to the hilt with more than her fair share of chemicals at any given time. In some ways, she's her own walking bomb.
I like the tennis ball grenades.
Yes, that is that is something that I loved as well too, and they come into play in the story as these, the tennis ball grenades. So,
all right, now this guy looks happy.
Yeah, so this is Ricky. He's one of our Revenants, and he was a teenage boy who loved a girl who he shouldn't, and the girl's dad didn't approve of him, and so he hired a couple of guys to rough him up, and the guys accidentally went too far, and he ended up and killed him, and they chained him to a tree in the woods and left him. The crows picked away at him, and then a year later he came back for revenge.
All right, so we've had a couple of Revenants in here, and I want to ask about the world of the Kill Journal. How prevalent is the Revenant plague? Is this post-apocalyptic, or is this more there are Revenants among us?
It's a Revenants among us sensation. So the idea in this story is that Revenants appear at different small towns and sort of hidden away places in the world or places of America, and they're being covered up. Their existence is being covered up. And so, and why exactly, without spoiling anything, the group doesn't know just yet. But imagine they are something more like in the presence of a serial killer, right? The whole nation isn't taken over by them, but in the areas where they strike, they're particularly potent. Okay.
And you don't want to start a national panic over supernatural creatures. Of course, no one would believe you anyway. More than likely.
No, not at all. So that is our fabulous. So this is St. George. So this is a somewhat slightly half mad preacher believes he's been called by God to stop the Revenants, and his congregation was attacked by a Revenant, and this is his mission, right? And he keeps the Kill Journal, and he's the one that leads them from like an investigation standpoint, is because he understands the rules of them, at least certainly in the beginning, better than any of the others.
All right, that's very cool. So is he did he discover that there were Revenants out there? Who's the one who knows everything that leads the group?
That's him.
This is him. Now, are Revenants a new thing in the world, or have they always been around and it's his turn to be leading a fight?
Bingo. So they've always been. So the idea of it is there is a deeper myth, right? Are these just one-off experiences with these monsters? What's actually causing them, right? Like, what's the force that causes these things to come back from the dead, is his great mission, right? Is to discover what is the true,
Get to the root cause.
The root cause of it all, right? That the revenants are the symptom of an evil, but what is that greater evil? And this is Sydney. And so she is somewhat of our point of view character. And this is her at her more badass state. When she starts at the beginning of issue 1, she's not as ready for the fight as she is here. And she has the most, the broadest arc, where she comes in to feel like she's going to fail and like she isn't up for this challenge. And then by the end of the story, she's leading the pack. And when St. George isn't around. And she lost her daughter, like we said in the other story, but she also has a slight sense of the revenants because she died and was brought back by the doctors. She has a slight sense of the world from beyond and those that have been there and back.
Ah, very cool.
Right?
Sort of like scanners kind of thing where she can sense them or see them or.
Right. Is that she has a sense for them that isn't an overwhelming thing like she's a mystic, but that she has an uncanny sense. And that develops a little bit, that ability. And then in volume 2, it'll develop a little more. But for the moment, it's just an extra sense.
All right. Well, that's all very cool. I'm liking what I'm seeing here. And I'm definitely, I might already be signed up for the newsletter. But
well, I hope you are, RJ.
I'm going to. I'll take care of that real fast. But one of the things I want to ask you about, this is a graphic novel and you've done one already. What impact, if any, did this crowdfunding phase that everyone's taking up with, how much did that impact you making your comics? I mean, you wanted to do them before, or you saw them doing on, Indiegogo and Kickstarter and said, hey, I can do this? Or
I think it was a bit of that. So what had happened is I'd been wanting, because I also I've done a lot of television around board games. If you can imagine, I directed and produced a series called Will Wheaton's Tabletop for 4 years, which is a celebrity board gaming show. And then I also recently released a board game for my other TV show, Escape the Night, which we raised about $600,000 on Kickstarter that I designed the game for. And so I've worked a little bit in that space, and it's done really big numbers in the crowdfunding world. Board games have, right? And I'd seen comic books doing something, but like it was always so little. I was like, that I don't know if that really is a thing. And then it was just maybe the end of last year, this year, early beginning of this year, I started to say, wait, there's finally a big enough audience there for it. I was seeing on Indiegogo, and I think I chose Indiegogo because we'd used it for tabletop back in the day, and they were really great with us. So I kind of felt like I owed them one. But I started to see these really big successes, with big numbers. And I don't mean big numbers in the sense like, oh, there's tons of money to be made, because that's not what it is. But there's enough money where you could do it, right? You could afford to actually to do the thing. And I was just kind of blown away. And so I said, you know what? I think maybe now there's been a big enough audience of people that let's do it. Let's try it on a crowdfunding campaign. Let's see what happens. And then sort of with the help of Facebook ads and hustling it around, on social media, the eighth was able to really take off, and so it's good. And then because what's so nice about the new world is that you do an ad on Facebook, or you connect with somebody, and then they're connected to you on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, and then they kind of stay a fan, they stay a customer, right? They are able to.
Yeah, if you consistently deliver, they will consistently come back.
That's right. And that's, as soon as I started to see that, I realized that's what I put the Kill Journal, and then I have another graphic novel that will launch earlier next year in the works. I'm like, let's make this happen. We've built these fans and they're excited. Let's keep it going. And also too, there's all these really awesome people like yourself, like Nicholas, like all the people I've been meeting on these streams it's a really amazing community that's given me a lot of energy for it.
So right now it's just at the sign up level for the newsletter. And by the way, folks, if you're watching here, and we hope that you are, the link for Adam's graphic novel project is the first thing you're going to see in the description below the video. I just went out to Indiegogo and did a search on Kill Journal and found nothing. So I guess when there are newsletters, it doesn't show up like that yet. It just didn't come back, or maybe it was going to give me too many things. But anyway, I obviously I still had the link, so I just clicked from there and got right to it, and that's what we're seeing on the screen here. So how has the sign up been working? I mean, have you been getting a lot of interest like this?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I see it here. I found it when I looked. Yeah, so I've got about 525 emails right now on the pre-launch page, which has been awesome to see. Thank you, Cavalry Collective. Yeah, the 8th is awesome, and if you back the 8th, you're so cool. And thank you for the statement of kindness. Yeah, the 8th was awesome, and if you're one of those backers, you're extra cool, or if you're just a fan of it. But yeah, so if you can imagine, I launched the 8th with no fans and no pre-launch. I just went cold turkey and dove in.
It's difficult to be the first one out, to get the first one out.
Yeah, and ended up doing a little over 35,000 on it, and so it was enough to pay for itself, and then kind of springboard off that for this next one.
So without any tiers or levels for anybody to see here, because it is still just the sign up. What kind of expectation do you have for the minimum basic tier? I'd say I just want the book, and I don't know what kind of stretch goals you'll hit, but if I just want to sign up for the book, how much of an outlay do you see somebody putting in for this? And this is, keep in mind, it's gonna be leather bound, 80-page hardcover.
Right. Yeah. So it's so it's a $40 for the leather bound, right? And the monthly digital issues are $15, and then for the mask and the leather bound is $200.
Okay.
So that's for the ultra fans. These are kind of pricey to make, and unlike the book where you can mass produce it, this is not quite there, but it's a really cool way. So, and I know a lot of people do variants and art and sketches and things. And I think for myself, I think as a fan, I like it when it's a little simpler.
Sure.
And so, and I think that lots of our backers on the 8th, I would think of the 615 backers, that probably 400 of them have never backed anything on Indiegogo. And probably half of those have never really read a graphic novel. A lot of them were first-time people that were just kind of fell in love with the art and the story. And so I think making it approachable to someone who knows nothing about comics is important.
I like the campaigns where it has fewer choices as to, how do I want to mix and match all of this stuff up?
Right.
I just like, for me, it's like, give me that book. If there's a choice of 3 of them, I'll pick one or I'll pick all.
Right.
But I do hope, because I think you'll have the opportunity here, for $40 for a leather graphic novel. That's a steal. But I do think you'll have opportunity for stretch goals to add on to those things.
Yep.
And they better be 8 stretch goals to reach die cut stickers. Die cut stickers of those characters, because I've got a brand new laptop with a virgin face on the front here, and
and it needs one.
I've got this sticker here that is just our sticker. So I've turned it into, the new corporate laptop. And for everybody watching, if you want one of these shiny little holofoil stickers, just send a self-addressed stamped envelope to us here at Critical Blast, 1097 Presswick Drive, Belleville, Illinois, 62221. And I'll just throw 2 of them in an envelope so that, you can put one on something and you'll give one to a friend. And I've thus conscripted you into our marketing army that way.
I love that.
But people love stickers on stuff, and it seems to be a common stretch goal.
Yeah,
and these are such cool characters that I'd love to see them die cut and look at that.
There's this cool one that I love, and at first, my business partner doesn't love stickers as much. He's like, Adam, what would you ever put a sticker on? And this is for Intergalactic Deathmatch, and it's cool. And I've got to convince him of that. So the stickers might be one, but what the 4 definite ones are each of those dossier stories. Is getting those out. So ultimately, ideally, by the end of the campaign, you're getting 112 pages of story.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah. So that's the goal. So that way you're getting something more that feels like what Mark Millar is giving you, right? But you're getting the full story. Right. And I think that, and nothing wrong with those creators who don't, but I think I always kind of feel a little cheated when it's like 52 pages and you waited 7 months. It's like,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Nothing wrong with that, because I know there's money and a lot of things to consider. But when I get a little more, I'm like, yeah, I got the whole story. And so
exactly. I mean, I did a Kickstarter. I didn't do the Kickstarter. I backed a Kickstarter of Jim Balance, and I just, his Tarot, Witch of the Black Rose Origins. All he was doing was collecting the first 10 issues from 20 years ago into a trade paperback. But it's like, yeah, $35, I'll back that. And by the time it was done, for no extra money on my part, I'm getting a second comic book, some stickers, a keychain of one of the characters. And I'm like, yeah, okay, this was more than I expected for my money, over delivered. And fans respond to that. When you run a campaign like that, they're like, I bought this book and I got all this cool stuff that, it's little things. It's, postcards or prints or little posters, but it's an extra step that fans feel like you cared more about the project and you delivered more to them than was promised. So they'll be right back here for the next one. Because
I think so. I totally think so. And in fact, I want to share a little something right here, if you don't mind me sharing screen for 1 second. Sure. So let me just do this real quick.
You're expected in other places.
Oh, hey, RJ, I don't know. I know. Here, I know. I can see. I was supposed to be on there last night, then they had to push to this night, so I had to bounce through both. But if you, that's awesome. So if you look at this here, this image here. So this is an image that was done by Preston Acevedo. It's a really cool artist and a great guy.
Oh yeah.
So this image is going out. So this is going to get colored by Steve Cannon, and it's going to be a print for all week 1 backers. This is, you just get this thrown in. If you back week 1, you get this print. And this image won't exist as a cover anywhere else, because I know that sometimes prints end up just images you get inside the book maybe, or as a cover. But I wanted to do a print that is fully disconnected, a different styling of art. But this will be that. So that's, speaking of cool stretch goals, here's another one. I guess not a stretch goal, it's just a week 1. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's very cool. I mean, that early responded things, or, like you said, signing up for the newsletter so that you're in the drawing for one of these masks. It's a great way to drum up excitement early on for the campaign. Now, you did mention, having to wait for a book and then, kind of being disappointed that you didn't get as much as you'd hoped for. What is the wait time that you're looking for on this? I mean, how much of your project do you like to have done before you launch the actual fronting of it? So
with the 8th, I had 5 issues done. With this, by the time the campaign closes, I'll have more than half of it complete. So that way, people who backed it digitally or the hardcover still get the digital. That literally, as soon as the campaign funds come in, 3 weeks after, you get a digital issue once a month. So I try to stay way ahead of it. It's a little harder on the pocketbook because I hedge the bet a little bit by,
yeah, exactly.
By paying for a lot of the book up front. But what I think it's a lot more fun for the fans, because it's just such a bummer to not a bummer. I just should say, sometimes I'll back something. I'm like, oh, that was so cool. And then by the time the board game shows up or the graphic novel shows up, I forgot I backed it. You know what I mean? And I wanted to not have that feeling where people could get something right away.
Yeah.
And so that's where, so right away digitally, and then we're probably going to be a February of next year. Or we're hoping, and there's still a detail being worked out with the printer, just because Chinese shipping is really tricky right now.
Yes.
So I hate to fully say February, and especially after election in November, maybe it gets worse. I'm not sure. So, but call it February, March, I would say.
All right. Yeah, it's where was I? I had something on the tip of my tongue that I was wanting to stick out there. Now it'll come back to me. But it was
no worries.
Because a lot of the people who are the creators that are pushing, who are the writers, like you are, you're the writer. You're not drawing anything here, and my stick figures make Cynical Man look really good. Cynical Man was an old stick figure comic book in the 80s that did really well, amazingly. People look at the funding and they don't realize that, hey, why is this is a really high goal to achieve. And if it's just the writer, it's like, well, yeah, that's the break-even point to pay off the artist that he's already paid for to have just the art for the covers and the panels that you've seen here. With that in mind, what kind of a goal are you looking at in Indiegogo to say, at this point, I have funded?
Yeah, so right now we're looking at around 10,000. I think we've got some other costs we're trying to get fully finalized, but I think that's probably where it's going to land to reach the funded line. And then we're hoping we can really get these stretch goals in so that we can hit new numbers so that we can afford to, do the art and finish these dossier stories in the back of it. So it's a little bit of a moving target, when you're making a crowdfunding campaign, because you don't know where it's going to land. So you're trying to, guesstimate where these are, what you can pull off.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who will underestimate their goal, knowing that they need, I need 10,000 to make this happen. I'm going to set my funding goal at 6,000, assuming I can chew off, 4,000 of my own money, but that I'll have enough excitement for a lower funded goal that a lot more people will get in, and I'll actually hit my 10,000 and beyond. So there's a psychological game to play with the marketing of it.
Yeah, there is. And so what we try to factor in, like what would be the artist cost and what would be the print for 1,000 copies, something like that, right? You try to get to, and obviously my writing fees, because I write and I letter all the books and I do all the layout and I do everything in InDesign and I build the whole thing, like remove that from the number, right? So it's like if worse comes to worse, I at least paid the people who I had to give money to, and backers get their item. That's super important for me.
Yeah. Cavalry Collective's talking about artist. I'm assuming that's $300 per page, not a 300-page graphic novel that you're working on there.
Yeah. No, it starts to turn out to be about that, right? Because once you get a line artist who, the modern world, most of them are doing their own pencils and inks in the indie world, but then you get a colorist and you get it lettered. And it's those are fair wages, right? These people are working hard. It's not 5 minutes to do it. But it's, can you make the ROI happen? Well, if you want to, Clint, bounce back to a couple of those images, I'd love to show a few of the interior pages so that people can start to see these.
This is what I have up as this.
Do you have?
I don't have the interior. I have the cards.
Oh, okay, gotcha. My bad. I thought I had sent those over. So I'm gonna.
You may have, and I didn't probably zip everything up because I probably looked at the cards like, well, this is what I can use this. I'll use this, and just went. And,
yeah, no worries. Let me just pop a screen share real quick, and you'll see this here. So this is the interior art quality. So you can see the lines here. This is Raymond Bermudez, amazing Filipino artist who I've worked with for a long time. And you can see this is one of the support groups in the Survivor. They call it the Survivors Club, but it's like a support group for people who've survived attacks, like an AA meeting, if you will. And this Revenant shows up and sort of butchers after people at this meeting, and the few who sort of survive it are the people that St. George recruits. And so you can see this cool, gnarly Revenant here with all the spikes taking out this Nubian girl. And then you can see Finch here, with his growling his teeth here in the center, right here. And then this is kind of like our dog-like character, and this is Marty. And so this is, and then this, you can see this here. Then part of the, let's switch. Let me try this to get a. So then this is the other half, I would say, of the Kill Journal. Is there's not only great action, but at the core of it, this is a spotter movie with a conscience, right? And this is the hard reality of the aftermath of being in a world so dark and violent, right? The sadness of what's happened. And I think that that's part of this. The charm of the book is that it isn't just a horror film; it's a character struggle in the midst of the horror. And you can see this character here. This is Sydney, and you can see she's got long hair still at this point in the story. She hasn't become the avenging angel as you saw in the pinup art, and she's afraid that she's going to fail, and she doesn't know if she has what it takes to do this, and she shirks along the way in the beginning, but ultimately comes around. And this is St. George here inside his church, which serves as their initial base of operations.
Very cool.
So
This is definitely the kind of art style that speaks to me as a comics reader. I know there's a lot of
cool.
different styles out there. There's like the more cartoony
Sure.
style, Humberto Ramos. Then there's like really, stretching the imagination styles. I like the not photorealistic. I like photorealistic too, but I like the realism art. And especially the heroic proportion here. No, I don't mean big boobs. None of these people have big boobs, but they look like, they could kick your ass, and they look like you could actually encounter somebody like this at a fitness club or in a movie.
Right. That there's more of a realism to it. And I think the story needed it, so it didn't get maybe silly, but it stayed, dramatic in its tale. And this artist, I love Raymond because he's good at conveying a lot of emotion on the faces, and I feel like that is key in this tale.
Yeah, again, looking at the cards that were over here, you can see the anger and the insanity, and particularly on the half. I'm not even sharing the screen. I'm sitting here looking at them and describing them. The lady who's been cut in half. She's in anguish. If she's hopefully that expression is frozen on her dead face, and she's not still alive with her bottom torso missing.
No, on her dead face, yes.
Because that would be very horrific to still be alive in that kind of a state. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the fact that this can be leather. I mean, where did you even find somebody to? Well, I mean, obviously people print those things, but as an independent comic book publisher, why did you even think that was affordable way to go and do this?
Well, interestingly enough, it's cheaper than a slip cover.
Okay.
A hardcover with a slip case is more expensive than a faux. And when I say leather bound, it's a faux leather.
All right.
Yeah, to do an actual authentic leather is, makes the price maybe just not really realistic, and also for some people they have maybe a moral problem with it. You know what I mean? Mass producing mass amounts of leather. Sure. So I thought, you know what? I don't need to mess with that. I just want to make something accessible. And so it's a faux leather, but it has the same texture and feel, and it's really impressive. And it's kind of like a little bit the color of my shirt will be the color of it.
A nice burgundy leather look to it.
Yeah. With gold foiling like the Bible. Right. And then it will have
hardcover before, and it gets, you get that cloth feel to it with the foil embossing. But this was our Bulletproof Origins young adult superhero novel that we're part of our publishing house. Stephen Mitchell wrote that. So I know that, going hardcover is, pricey. And you've got to really put a good MSRP on it if you want to even make $1.50 off the overall cost by the time, the publisher takes their part and the printer takes their part. That I think it goes for like $20-something on Amazon for hardcover, and we make $1.20 off of it.
Right. Well, it's interesting. That's one of the exciting things about a crowdfunding campaign is because there isn't someone else in the middle. There's just us. There's just a 5% fee for Indiegogo and then 3% for credit card. So it's at 8%, which is significantly less than retail taking 50 and then a distributor taking 11. And then, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah. So, the 55% discount you've got to offer to the retailers for them to even put it in their store.
Right. Exactly. So as a result, for a price point that it couldn't be in store, you can charge a direct fan, and they can get an experience that it just isn't even affordable in store. You could never do it.
Sure.
And so, so that is because I wanted that feeling to there to be a tactile feeling of it. Let me show you this thing real quick that I think shows the look here. This is the initial design work that was used as the mock-up the artist is working now. But I'm going to go ahead and show you this to kind of give you a sense of what it will look like. So this is a good thing to see in regards to what the styling and the design will be. This is too deep of an emboss. It'll be a deboss where it depresses the leather. It won't be quite at the extremity of this.
Okay.
Of this extremity, but this kind of designing, and we'll have some symbols here, and it will have the kill journal. So it'll have some qualities like this in its styling.
So are you going to look for the faked up rough edges on the thing, or are you going to?
So unfortunately, that really does escalate price, because then everyone has to be hand handled and just hand distressed. And unfortunately, it takes 4 hours. So yeah,
just beat them with a hammer when they get there.
I know, right? So one thing we've been, because we have a forwarder, so that when it ships out of the factory, it goes to the UK and to the US, and so that way people in other territories don't have to pay $57 in shipping; they can get it, for 12. And so, like an intermediary to do the distressing, we won't have that, but it will have in its styling, it'll have some things that help point to the distressing.
Yeah, that way nobody can complain that it didn't arrive mint, though. It's like, well, no, it's supposed to look that way. you got it mint.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a wreck. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, and hopefully people read it enough that it becomes that.
All right. Well,
and I think that there's mixed feelings about distressing. So I think that erring on the side of cleaner makes some collectors happier.
So you said this launches on September the 21st?
September 29th is the launch.
September 29th. It's a long way out. You have 25 days to go. So, if you're worried about missing out or forgetting about it, that's what the mailing list is for, folks. So go down there and click on that link to the Indiegogo and just put your name in the mailing list. Then go check your mail, because Indiegogos want to make sure that they're not spamming people, and confirm your email address so that you are then fully on the list. That you won't be on the list until you confirm your email address to Indiegogo. I've been around this block a couple of times. I know what.
You know how it goes. You've got to confirm the email, which is good of them to do, right? So that people don't just get blasted. But there's a little bit something to it. So,
all right.
Well, go ahead, RJ. Sorry.
It's been great having you on here. Is there anything else you wanted to add about the Kill Journal before we probably both head off to different streams here? I know I'm going to be on another one here in a little while.
Yeah. No, I mean, I would say the last thing is sign up. There's cool stuff to get. There's cool free art coming, but also sign up, because this is going to be a horror tale unlike any other, and certainly unlike any that are currently in the realm of indie comics. And get in now, because the Failed Superheroes Club world is only expanding, and I think you'll be happy you chose it.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Bap2.
Everybody in the chat. If you are here because you're horror fans, then definitely get into the mailing list. And once the campaign goes live, back the Kill Journal. If you're wanting to read some horror before then, I would like to point out that Critical Blast has just published a horror anthology called The Devil You Know, which is 20 short stories by 20 authors around the globe, encounters with the devil. And that's available on Amazon. It's in the link in the descriptions way below, because Adam comes first. It's his show. And with that, Adam, we've been glad to have you on, and hope to see you again maybe later in the campaign. Maybe it starts to wrap up. We just have to help push things over the edge. We'd be glad to have you back here again and do a little bit of a telethon kind of thing.
Thanks so much, RJ. Much